One of the last things I want to test on my board here is this USB-Fi here, and this is going to allow me to have a host port that I could plug in things like a thumb drive. So I am using the processing system on the Zynq, connecting to this. This happens to be a microchip USB 3320 USB-Fi, connecting to a mini USB AB connector, and then from that I have a mini A to a regular sized A, and I have a thumb drive plugged into that. So the goal is to be able to boot and be able to access that thumb drive. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the system, and while the system is booting up here, I can talk through, what was it that I had to do to make this work. So first of all, I had to use the PetaLinux -config utility, and two things I had to configure. One is the kernel and one is the U-boot, and both of those essentially went in and turned on some additional USB support that I needed to be a host, etc. I also went into the device tree file. There's a system-user.dtsi that I had to modify and specify a little detail about the USB-Fi and the USB port. And so I got that done. I rebuilt the PetaLinux and got that all copied over to my little SD card here, and that is what I'm booting off of right now. And once this comes up, it's going to ask me to log in with the default credentials, which is just a PetaLinux, so I will do that. And give it a new password. And at this point, then I can see, what did I find up above? Did it mount my devices? Did it, for example, find this drive? And if I go up a little bit further, I'm just scanning real quick here. It did find a USB found. It does say that there was a USB hub found, one port. So that is all good to see. And then if I keep scrolling down later, a new high-speed USB device that it found, U-disk. And I keep on going down through that. Detected, direct access. Shows me that it is 32 gig. Okay, so that's all great. Then it got down to here, and it looks like the volume was not properly unmounted, probably because I had just turned it off at some point previous. And then I do also see this line, and I'm going to talk about this later in the video. I did get my Ethernet up and running. But this MacB, for some reason, is renaming it from ETH0 to this name right here. And I just have to figure out where I change that or how I deal with that in the PetaLinux configuration. So I think I am going to try a few things down here. So maybe if I'm looking at the storage side of things, maybe what I'll try to do, can I just do like a df-h? And here I see my thumb drive. That would be this one right here. It's only shown up as 512 meg, and maybe that's file systems, that whatever. There's something there that it's only shown up 512 instead of the full 32 gig. I would assume that it is which file system is being used as this gets loaded, but I think that's just a configuration thing, not a hardware. And I'm at this point just worried about the hardware on the board, and that 512 that it's limiting it to. I can try to figure that out later. I think that's just OS software type of thing. But it does show that it mounted it as /run/media/thumb2-SDA1. So what I probably could do is I could just do a sudo, and I'm going to just do a listing of that. And so if I go out and say, well, show me what's in there, it's going to ask me for my password real quick. But it shows that there's a test.txt and a test.dir. So it just read that fine. If I want, I could say, well, show me what's inside of, then I'll go out to run media thumb and test.txt. And what I have in there is that text that it showed up. That is this is a test doc. And so then it showed me my prompt again, but this is a test doc is what was in that file. I suppose I could do things like sudo make a directory, and I'll do a run media thumbs, and then I'll make a, I don't know, I'll call it testdir2. And then I'll go back up and do a listing, and you can see I have now the text file, the testdir that was there, and then also this testdir2. So I am able to read and write that USB thumb drive. So that is a good sign. I mentioned on that Ethernet that wasn't coming up all the way automatically. Maybe I can take a quick look at, can I get that up and running entirely here? So IP-ADDR show, and I can see I've got this link that did not get an IP address. So, and let's see, right here is the name of it. And actually it shows that it's down. So I might try a couple of things and see if I can just get this to work real quick. And maybe the first thing I'll try to do is get an IP address assigned to it. And I'll just paste in something that looks like that. And so now that IP address is set up and it says link is up. And if I look at it at this point, I can see I've got the IP address. It doesn't show that it's down, so I think it should be running. And maybe a quick test is if I just ping, I'll ping the router. And I'm able to ping that just fine. So I'll break out of that. So just me, coming in and telling it, here's the IP address for that. I was able to get that up and running. So that tells me that there's not I don't think there's a hardware issue. I think it's just PetaLinux and getting everything configured properly inside of it to do all this automatically when it boots up. If I wanted to see if I could then get out to the internet or something like that, I would probably need to add a gateway or a default route. So that will add that route for me. If I want to do some name resolution, I'll need to put in some DNS entry here. And so I'm going to come over here and put that in. And I need to say name server that, and then I will write and quit. So that should give me DNS name resolution. So if I do a ping of Microsoft, it resolved it and it's pinging it fine. So that all seems to be working. And then I had posted in the community post, I had just done a simple wget. So if I was to come in here and do that, like I want to go fetch this file, now it's going to start downloading that file. So I think the Ethernet is working fine, again, as far as the hardware is concerned. And I know I can test it separately and run it at full gig and have no issues. The SD card booting to PetaLinux getting both to my USB 5 for hosting and also Ethernet is all working fine. So really everything on this board is checking out at the moment. The only thing I have not tested that I probably need to do yet is the SPI flash, which I have on the bottom side of this. I have yet to need it, and I don't know how often I will use it. I'll probably be using this SD card more than anything. But I do need to test that flash memory at some point. So I'll do that when I get a chance. But I think for the most part, I'm going to consider this board pretty much done. And maybe my closing comments, this will probably be the end of this specific, PCB build series, because really the PCB has been designed, built, and as far as I can tell, things are working pretty well. Maybe I will do a quick shutdown so I can turn the power off on that board. So while that's shutting down, what I have left on the hardware, like I said, really, I think I've made it through the hardware. So I'm good on all of that. And my system's halted, so I'm going to power it off, and I'm just going to disconnect and talk through a couple last things on here as this video kind of closes things out. As far as problems that I had, I only had a few things that I had to modify on the board. And so one of those is I was missing a couple of pull-ups down here, and I ended up just soldering on a couple of tiny surface mount resistors and doing a little pull-up in this. So there's a tiny little pull-up wire there. I did another tiny little bodge over here because I wanted to swap my transmit receive pins coming from my Zynq down to this serial chip were backwards. So I had 0 ohm resistors on both of those lines, so I just popped those off and then basically crossed over those signals. So that was an easy fix, and I had put in those 0 ohms just for that purpose in case I had it messed up, which it ends up I did, even though I thought I had triple checked it. Maybe also one other thing on the back side, and this would be for this Ethernet transceiver here. There were 2 power rails that I forgot to put the flag on to actually pull it to the power rail. So I have come in here then and just put in a couple bodge wires that are adding the power rail connections that should have been there that I missed. But other than that, I don't think I've really made any changes to this. I have learned that the way I've got the power set up, just always leaving it on the DC barrel. I can still plug in the USB-C and power it purely off of that. And that works fine. But the fuse I have on that is only 0.5 amp. And actually, if I go in and just check and see what am I pulling for power at this point, let me get this all connected again. So I've been using, this little thing to kind of give me a little bit of a readout on power, but let me get that booted up and should see that in the terminal window here, but looks like 0.56 amps roughly. This isn't super accurate, but something along those lines is what it's pulling. And I'm not doing anything hard enough with it yet. That's even warming up the actual Zynq. Plus that fan is probably doing a decent job of whatever there is for heat being generated. It's pulling off, I think, fairly quickly with the heat sink and the fan. But at the end of the day, I guess my closing comment is I'm fortunate that everything worked as well as it did here. And at some point I had commented that I probably thought I had a 25% chance of actually getting to the point where that was all going to work, or that it would work, even the core part of it. And it ends up that I've made it through it and pretty much have everything running. Again, the only thing I have not tested yet is that flash on the bottom side, but that's a pretty simple circuit, so hopefully unlikely that there's a problem with that. So I think I've gotten lucky probably as part of it, and I've tried to do enough research to not run into major issues. And my first attempt at a bunch of stuff on here, especially the routing, has turned out okay. And all the guidance from all of you that have been watching the series, I definitely have appreciated the help and the guidance, the different tips that you've given, because I definitely would have had more struggles if I would not have had some of that information you've provided. So thanks for all that. Thanks everybody for watching this series. And like I said, I think I'm going to sign out of this series at this point, because the goal was the PCB, and the PCB appears to be done for all practical purposes. And now I can pivot into just working with Vivado and Vitus and PetaLinux and all the stuff that goes with that. Thanks again, everybody, and I appreciate you all following.